Welcome to the Red and Bold Show. What is up? We're thrilled to have you here. My name is Marc Adams. You can find me at 49ers Camelot. You can find me on 49erswebzone.com. I'm joined by my co-host, Anthony Robertson of 49ers Cutback. How's it going, Ant?
It's going good. It's football season, right? We're here. We're just a little over 24 hours away from kickoff of the regular season, and this is exactly what I've been waiting for. The off season, everything is getting tired, but football season is here, and the 49ers are finally at full strength. We've got everyone back in the building. The vibes are at an all-time high right now. It's exciting times in San Francisco, and I'm excited for the season. Games Thursday, Friday, college Saturday, football Sunday, football Monday. It doesn't get better than this.
That's right. David is in the chat here. He said, looking forward to this. Ant, what up with them Seminoles? Adams, your Sooners look like they might play some defense this year. Let's go 49ers and Fighting Irish. So we got a Notre Dame guy in here. Pigskin is officially back. Yeah, it's going to be fun. You know, I don't expect big things from Oklahoma this year simply because they're still kind of rebuilding. They're entering the SEC, and so I don't really expect anything huge from them. But yeah, their defense did look better for sure last weekend. So excited about that. But I'm a lot more excited about the 49ers and what's going on. Trent Williams and Brandon Aiyuk are back. So that's great news for the 49ers. I want to ask you, when we look at the fact that Aiyuk came back a little bit less than a week ago and Trent Williams came back just yesterday, when we look at a Monday night game after missing the entire offseason program, after missing training camp, what can we realistically expect from Aiyuk and Williams in this first game as far as rust, as far as Aiyuk and his timing with Brock Purdy, Trent Williams and his ability to gel with the rest of the offensive line? What can we expect from them?
Yeah, I think it's the $1 million question. I think when it comes to Trent Williams, I think it's a little bit easier for him to adapt. He's been doing this for 14 years. I mean, he's going to year 15. He's going to be accustomed to what it takes for him to be ready to play on Monday. And I think that him coming back when he did, I would normally say a player coming back this late, it would probably be a little bit difficult for a normal offensive lineman to get back in the fold and be able to play at a high level. But Trent Williams is a complete different animal than anyone else. This is literally the best offensive tackle in the league. So there are concerns, I think, as far as maybe like conditioning, what's that going to look like as far as football shape? Also, some of the contact, right? Building up, a callus in training camp is usually what these guys do. So you wonder about the nicks and the bruises and things like that. But I think Trent Williams is going to be just fine. He's an absolute monster. Now, at times, if he decided that he needed to take a series off, I'm sure they would be okay with Jalen Moore going in there for a series or two, and maybe that's what they have to do to bridge the gap to make sure that Trent Williams is capable of playing. So I don't know what his conditioning looks like. I think that's hard for anyone to figure out. I'm sure he's been working his tail off, making sure he was prepared for when they finally got this thing done. But I think Trent will be okay. I think when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk, I'm not really concerned about timing. Because this offense is predicated on being getting from point A to point B. It doesn't matter, what receiver it is. That's just the key, getting from point A to point B. You're talking about a few years ago, well, more than a few now, when they traded for Emmanuel Sanders, he was familiar with the offense, so he was able to get a chemistry with Jimmy Garoppolo right away, and that was two guys who didn't work together. Brock Purdy's worked with Brandon Aiyuk, and they've had a great rapport over the last couple of years. So I think it'll be seamless. I think we'll see less Brandon Aiyuk than we saw all last year, where he was playing pretty much all the snaps. I think we might see more breaks for him as they kind of allow him to integrate, but I think he's going to start. I think he's going to play a significant amount of snaps, and the 49ers are going to try to get him the football because it's tough matchups. That cornerback group for the New York Jets is very, very good, and so they need Aiyuk. They need all hands on deck, and so I think we could see that a little bit. So we don't know for sure, but I think both of them are going to play and both of them are going to start.
Is the biggest concern for Trent Williams and Brandon Aiyuk injury, especially the soft tissue type that we often see from a player that's holding out or in Aiyuk's case, holding in. Is that the biggest concern for those two?
I think for Brandon Aiyuk, soft tissue injury is the biggest concern. What happens to a hamstring or a calf or something like that when he's pushing harder than he's ever pushed? Because when you're going through normal drills, you're pushing full speed, but it's a lot different when all of a sudden you're in a game situation, adrenaline's up, and now all of a sudden the bright lights are on you. You're running a little bit faster. You're working a little bit harder, getting in and out of your break and creating separation. And so maybe those things can happen. Now, Aiyuk has done a pretty good job of not having those types of problems since his rookie season. You go back and you look at 2020, that was the year that was tough for everyone, a shorter training camp because of everything going on globally. And so he really struggled there, and he ended up dealing with a hamstring. So I think because he's a veteran, he's definitely got a better chance of staying healthy. Hopefully he's been doing his yoga and that kind of stuff to stay flexible. But yeah, I would say that's the most thing I worry about with him. With Trent, I don't really worry about the soft tissue. He's moving a little bit differently than someone like Brandon Aiyuk, but I do still worry about injury when it comes to a 36-year-old offensive lineman. And we've seen Trent have issues before when it came to ankles and things like that. So I think injury concern, I'm more worried about Brandon than I am Trent. But with Trent, I'm more worried about conditioning and just kind of being ready to go for that contact every single time.
Yeah, that's definitely a concern. If they can get through week one with a win and have those guys healthy, I think that's a big win. Sandwiched in between the Aiyuk and Trent Williams stories was an even bigger story, not just about football, but about life, period, when we found out that Ricky Pearsall had been shot in an attempted robbery situation. When I first heard it, because I was on to cover the news for 49ers Web Zone, and what that means is anything that's breaking, I have to write about. And so a lot of times I'm searching for things to write about because sometimes the news is slow. And so when I first saw the news, I wasn't even sure if it was real. And so I didn't want to repost. I didn't want to write anything. So I did repost and said something like, I don't know if this is real or not, but let's hope that that Ricky's okay. This was huge. I mean, definitely, regardless of what you believe, definitely the hand of God was on him, because to have a bullet go through his chest and out his back and have John Lynch say he may play this season is remarkable. The fact that the police officer who was first on the scene said that he asked her, "Am I going to die?" It shows you how bad of a situation it was and how much worse it could have gotten. What do you think this does for the team? Could it be a distraction? Could it galvanize the team? I mean, they had the opportunity to video chat with him, while they were at the party, and so a lot of players were talking about this, and Trent Williams even talked about it, that this was something that pushed him even more so to get back with the team. What effect do you think this could have on the 49ers this season?
Well, I definitely think that it could bring the team together. I mean, if there was any question marks about this team, possibly being not ready for the season or maybe having a hangover, I don't think that's the case anymore. When stuff like this happens and real life enters the conversation with what could have been an absolute tragedy of great proportions with what would have happened to Ricky Pearsall, if that bullet goes one way or the other, it just makes everyone think, and everyone kind of takes and puts things into perspective. But what it makes everyone realize too is how much they love the fact that they get to play football for a living. And I think that this team is going to come together. They're going to support Ricky Pearsall. And I think it's going to kind of just make it an emphasis for them to just play for each other the entire year. I love what Trent Williams said about him feeling compelled to get back in the building so he could kind of talk and work with the younger players and help them through some of these things. I thought that was really nice. I thought it was great the way that he talked about Pearsall coming up to him during minicamp and introducing himself and how that made an impression. And I think that should go a long way in teaching other rookies how to go about their business. And I've been saying this for all throughout training camp. I believe Ricky Pearsall carries himself like a veteran. He carries himself different. Like, there's just something different about Ricky Pearsall. That's why I've been so excited about him. And so I'm so happy that it worked out the way it did, where there was no major damage. Pearsall's already back in the building. That's fantastic. And I'm going to leave everything else out of it. You know, all that other stuff. I think everyone kind of aired that out on Twitter about, you know, whether, you know, this should happen or not. I think the good thing is Ricky Pearsall's moving in the right direction. This team is firmly behind him. And I do believe now we've got a group that's completely together and ready to roll as we get into the Monday Night Football game. And I can't wait until Ricky comes back. He's already begging John Lynch, hey, man, when do I get to get back on the field? And I love that. That's the kind of player he is. And the fact that he said to John, you know, I'm not injury prone, right? Well, you know, that's kind of funny after getting shot. You're definitely not an injury prone guy from that.
Yeah, obviously he's referencing the shoulder injury and what he had a hamstring, I think. So, but he wasn't injury prone in college. I mean, he had the shoulder thing, but the guy never missed games. So he's as tough as they come. I thought about, you know, when we had Matt Mayoko on that week, I thought about asking him, but we were kind of pressed for time. But I wanted to ask him in that section where we were talking about, you know, some of the stuff from years before when he covered the team. Remember several years ago when a rookie offensive lineman, Thomas Harrion, remember when he died following a preseason game, maybe in Denver, I think. And I just was kind of curious how, as a beat writer, that affected the team, how that affected the media. And I definitely would be interested to see, to hear his take now on how that affected that team. When was it? What was that? 2008, something like that, somewhere around there, 2009. I can't remember exactly the year, but it would be curious to see how that affected that team, and maybe give us a little bit of indication of how it might affect this team, though every team is different. So I wanted to see if you saw what Grant Cohn posted yesterday. And I know that some of our listeners are going to get irritated with me for bringing up Grant. I like some of what he does. Some of what he does irritates me, but I like some of the things that he does. But yesterday he said that someone close to the team, and I don't think that he would make this up. I definitely think that he tends to go really negative with the 49ers. He and his dad both do this. I remember his dad was pretty hard on Jim Harbaugh. Now they talk about Harbaugh like he's Bill Walsh Jr. But I remember that Lowell Cohn was not as quick to endorse Harbaugh then. So it seems like they just don't like who's the coach at the present time. But yesterday he said that someone close to the team told him that the front office, which I don't know what that means because John Lynch is part of the front office, but the front office is very upset with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, and that Kyle and John are on the hot seat, and that they're angry over all the money that they've spent. Do you give any kind of credence to this, or do you think where there's smoke, there's fire? Or do you think that this is just somebody talking and there's really nothing to it? To me, they've had so much success that why would they be on the hot seat? That makes no sense to me.
I think it's very interesting. I don't know. It sounds like the front office is upset with the front office. That was kind of weird to me that the front office would be upset with John Lynch, who is the front office. Right. So this would have to come from somebody higher up. But I mean, the thing is, right, if Jed York and others are not okay with the financial, billings and what's going on there, they could easily say no. They could have said, we're not going to sign Brandon Aiyuk to a long-term extension. Go ahead and trade him away. Even if it's pennies on the dollar, we want to save money. They could have made a lot of decisions on Trent Williams as well. They could have let him stay away. They are signing off on this, and they are signing off on big money up front. I mean, $47 million to Brandon Aiyuk by April 1, 2025, $48 million in the first 2 years to Trent Williams. This doesn't come off as an organization that's upset with the way that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are handling things financially. And the way that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have built this thing has showed a lot of sustainability. They've been good for a long time. Every time the 49ers go to the playoffs, every time the 49ers go to the NFC Championship, Super Bowl, the Yorks and the 49ers organization makes more money than they've ever made before. And so this is like literally a license to print money. I don't know why they would be upset with Kyle and John other than the fact they haven't won the Super Bowl. So the financials of it doesn't make sense to me because Jed York signs off on everything anyways. He was the one last year that said, if you're going to go get a defensive tackle, go get the best defensive tackle. I don't want number 2. I don't want number 3. I want the best. And so to me, it's interesting. I heard it. I didn't know how much credence to put into it. But to me, it doesn't completely line up with the thought process of what Jed York would be thinking. If Jed York went full Eddie and said, hey, you guys aren't winning a championship, I'm upset about it, that I would understand. I just don't understand the financial viewpoint on this thing. So to me, I know they need to get a Super Bowl victory. John and Kyle will tell you the same thing, but I don't think they're on the hot seat at all. I mean, you don't build a team that's this good for this long, and then all of a sudden you think you're just going to change it up. If Jed York does, remember Chip Kelly, remember Jim Tom Sula. Those were not good situations. You're in a great situation right now. I don't get it. It didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. And Dennis Erickson, who could forget that 2-14 season in 2004, probably the worst 49ers team that I personally have ever seen. I agree with you. Jed would have to sign off on these big contracts. Almost certain of that. Parag is negotiating those contracts. So to say that Jed and Parag are mad at Lynch and Shanahan, I just think that that's probably not true. Somebody, I doubt that Grant would make it up, but I still think that it's probably not true. David Campbell said Shanahan is the most employable non-player in the entire NFL. He would be hired somewhere else so fast it would make your head spin. Completely agree with that. David Morazzo said the 49ers make and spend a lot of money. That's how it should be. So, yeah, a lot of people here. Mark Graves said exactly who out there is better than Kyle. It's interesting to see what people think about this. Mr. Corey said David Lombardi and Grant Cohn are like yin and yang. They one is super negative and one brown noses the 49ers 95% of the time. Yeah, that's pretty funny and true. David said Kyle is on the second coldest seat in the NFL. Who's number 1, David? That's got to be Reed. I mean, that's obvious, but
he's going for 3 in a row. There's no way that seat's even close to being warm.
No. Imagine if he pulls that off when even the 49ers and Patriots dynasties, the Steelers dynasties, the Cowboys, none of those teams ever did it. That would be incredible. Let's hope that it doesn't happen because I'm sick of hearing about the Chiefs.
I'm with
All
you.
right. Let's get into what everybody's here to talk about, and that is 49ers and Jets Monday Night Football. This is going to be exciting. Now that Trent Williams is in the building and with the team and he's going to be on the field, I feel better about this. I would have been tempted to pick the Jets if Trent Williams isn't there because their defense is legit.
Yeah, their defense is really good. I was kind of scouring it. I did a 49ers versus Jets first look video, and I was really looking at their defense and trying to find weaknesses. And the first thing I noticed right off the bat is their cornerback room is fantastic. Of course, Sauce Gardner, he's absolutely great. Whenever you have a lockdown number 1 corner, you're very good there. Then they got DJ Reed, the former 49er, and he's been one of the best second, cornerbacks in the league. He's done a very good job out there. And then they actually just re-signed their nickel corner to a big deal. Michael Carter getting the biggest nickel corner deal in history. So they've got 3 very good cornerbacks, and I think that's going to put the 49ers to the test when it comes to passing the football. I think their one weakness would be safety, where they don't really have a lot of talent when it comes to safety. And so they're good. They're not great. And I think that's one thing the 49ers can attack. And we've seen Kyle Shanahan use George Kittle and use McCaffrey to find advantages that way. And so I think that's probably one of the weaknesses I see for the Jets. But overall, a very talented defense. that has some former 49ers and former 49ers first-round picks along their defensive line, including Solomon Thomas and Javon Kinlaw. It's a fun group. I think the question mark for the Jets, too, is going to be how well are they going to stop the run? They were not good against the run last year, and Javon Kinlaw was very bad against the run last year, and Solomon Thomas has been very bad against the run throughout his career when playing defensive tackle. I think those are some question marks. Quinnen Williams is great, but do they have the necessary talent around him to be able to consistently stop the 49ers run game? I think that's going to be a key in this football game.
Yeah, and it looks like Hassan Reddick probably won't play unless they work out some kind of contract thing soon. I haven't heard that that's happened today. So it would lead me to believe that his chances of playing are pretty slim, and that definitely benefits the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, Hassan Reddick was going to be a big part of that pass rush. They got Jermaine Johnson on the other side. He's a young player that's, pretty good. Then they also got Michael Clemens. He's probably going to get a lot of snaps as well. So they've got a nice, talented young group, including Will McDonald, the guy they drafted last year out of Iowa State. So a lot of Iowa State players in this game as well. Breece Hall, Will McDonald, Brock Purdy, they're going to be on full display. But I think when it comes to the edge rushing, they definitely are missing something without Hassan Reddick. He was going to give a speed rush element that was going to make it a little bit more difficult for a player like Colton McKivitz. Colton McKivitz sometimes struggles with him, but it's going to be a different group and a different rotation because I don't think Hassan Reddick is coming across and signing a new contract anytime soon. Maybe they'll get something done. I do think a defensive edge rusher could step out there day one and go play, but I think they definitely take a hit with not having Reddick.
Steve-O said Kinlaw coming for someone's hat. Well, let's hope it's not Brock Purdy's hat. Wanted to ask you this. Mr. Corey said the Jets safeties suck, though. So does their run D. How are they against the run? Will the 49ers be able to establish that, or is it going to be tough sledding up front?
Well, one of the first things that you notice about their last year's team was they struggled against the run. They gave up 124 yards per game on the ground. They gave up 4.1 yards per carry. Now, what's interesting is the 49ers actually gave up 4.1 yards per carry, but gave up 89 yards per game. So it just shows you the difference between the two because the 49ers offense was able to score points while the Jets offense last year with no Aaron Rodgers could not score points. It could not stay on the field. So they gave up more yards on the ground. But that has been a real problem for Robert Saleh's defense, has been stopping the run. And it's a surprise because they have really good linebacker play. But the problem has been defensive tackle and defensive ends being able to set the edge and defensive tackles take on those duo blocks and be able to stop the run. The problem is Javon Kinlaw, Solomon Thomas, your first two guys. Kinlaw's probably going to start. Solomon Thomas, first rotational piece. These guys are below 50% when it comes to win rate against the run. They're not very good. PFF does not have them ranked good, and we all know by watching them. Kinlaw was very bad last year against stopping the run. He was good at rushing the passer. He looked good last year. So I think that's a real problem, and I think the 49ers can take advantage of that. 49ers Christian McCaffrey and this 49ers run game averaged 4.8 yards per carry last year. They averaged 140 yards per game on the ground. I think that is going to be one of the big things the 49ers need to do. If they can run the ball consistently at the Jets and they can get movement, that will take the pressure off Aaron Banks to handle Quinnen Williams in the pass protection, and that will also prevent Kinlaw from being able to get pressure as well going against Dominic Pooney. So running the ball is going to be hugely important. That's going to take pressure off McKivitz and the rest of the offensive line. So, yeah, I think that's going to be a focus of the 49ers is getting some movement up front. I think Dominic Pooney and Aaron Banks can get it done.
Do you think that with McCaffrey coming back from this calf injury, that we could see a lot of number 24? Would seem like it would be a good change of pace, different, little different style there. Might we see more of that instead of just completely relying on McCaffrey?
Yeah, I think we will see some Jordan Mason. I think that, Kyle Shanahan's comments early on in the offseason about the fact that Christian McCaffrey is probably going to get less touches when it came to running the football as they look to kind of keep him healthy throughout the season. And I think Jordan Mason's earned the right to get a little bit more carries. He's looked better than he's ever looked before. So I do think he's going to get some carries in this game. And, if he gets rolling, they'll stick with him a little bit. And I think there's a stretch in this game where we need to see Jordan Mason. And I think most of the second quarter would be a good time to see Jordan Mason. 49ers bring McCaffrey back in for like the last 4 minutes of the second quarter, and then let Jordan Mason roll for the beginning part of the third quarter. Really let him, the way they did with Elijah Mitchell in 2022 when McCaffrey got there, take a lot of those carries and get a lot of work. And then that way McCaffrey's fresh for the fourth quarter. He can come in there and really start kind of bearing down on these guys. So I think they're going to use these two guys in tandem. I don't think we'll see a ton of Jordan Mason. It's not going to be like all of a sudden he's splitting carries with Christian McCaffrey, but I do think he's going to get more carries than we've seen him get in an average game.
I'm going to come back to that. David asks, any thoughts on the new rookie numbers? I love Renardo, but hate number 0.
Yeah, I mean, Renardo Green went to 0. I know that Malik Mustafa went to 6. Jacob Cowing, he switched his number to 19. That was interesting to me because it was tough enough for me to get used to Trent Taylor wearing 19, and now Jacob Cowing is going to be wearing 19. I get it. I would have loved to have seen Jacob Cowing in a number 6 or one of those single digit numbers. But overall, I thought that, it was good changes. I think I was getting used to, I'm one of the few that like 83. I thought 83 looked good on Jacob Cowing. So I've been okay with him staying with that. But yeah, I mean, I like these guys getting into their stuff. It finally got Garendo. That's a good thing. Garendo got to 31. So Renardo Green changes his number, got Garendo out of 49 and into 31. He goes from being, the normal rookie number that Bobby Turner seems to give these guys. Elijah Mitchell was originally 49 to getting into more of a running back number in 31. So I did like that change.
Yeah, I don't get I mean, you do have those times where you're like, that number just doesn't look right. And I know that there was somebody who was cracking on. We'll see, Isaac Garendo was wearing 49 in the preseason, and there was a defensive player wearing 49 as well, I think. And somebody, I don't remember who it was, but somebody said no defensive player should wear 49. And I just thought to myself, tell that to Jeff Fuller, who wore 49 for the 49ers. And I still remember in Super Bowl 23, whether it was Dick Enberg or Merlin Olsen, those two guys called that game. And one of them said, Ronnie Lott is not the hardest hitter on the 49ers. It's Jeff Fuller. And that guy was a beast until he injured, got paralyzed or something.
Yeah.
I think maybe the following year. But 49 looked good on him. But I get it. That number does kind of look funny sometimes. But
I think it was Jalen Mahoney that was wearing it too. Another safety was wearing it during the preseason.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was a defensive back for sure. Mr. Corey said I had a Jeff Fuller football card, and David said Fuller was a stud. It was Enberg. So okay, all right. So yeah, I remember somebody saying that during that, because I was like, whoa, he's saying that Fuller hits harder than Ronnie Lott. But at that point in his career, he probably did. Mr. Corey said 83 was perfect for Cowing. David said the same thing. Cowing looked good in 83. But so when the 49ers have the ball, you think they're going to have more success running the ball than they do passing the ball? Because, I mean, as you already mentioned it, really good corners that they have. Who do you see, if you agree with that statement that they'll have more success running the ball than throwing, what do you see from wide receiver wise? Are we going to be looking at something like what we saw in the Super Bowl, where it's hard for the receivers to get much separation, and maybe Jawan Jennings is the receiver who has the most success? Or do you think that it's going to go differently?
Yeah, I don't know if the Jets can man up the 49ers across the board. I don't know if that works out for them. I expect to see Sauce Gardner lining up on Brandon Aiyuk a lot. But when you're talking about Robert Saleh's defense, you're still looking at a defense that's very similar to the 49ers. They're going to run cover 3. They're going to run palms coverage. They'll have man principles in there, and they'll run some men, and that's when you'll get your matchups of Sauce Gardner on Brandon Aiyuk. But the problem is the 49ers have more pass catchers than just wide receivers. And that's where it gets interesting. Normally, I would look at the wide receivers versus corner matchup and say, hey, it's going to be tough to get some completions. And then I would turn my focus to Christian McCaffrey and say, what does he look like against the linebackers? The problem is the Jets linebackers are pretty good too. This isn't one of those ones you can find a distinct advantage of Christian McCaffrey versus the linebackers. So you turn your attention to George Kittle. And I think that's where you find your real strength is George Kittle against the safeties of the New York Jets. And so I think that the wide receivers are going to have some advantages. I do think Deebo Samuel is going to be really strong for Reed. I think that's going to be a matchup that's going to be fun to watch. DJ Reed's going to be there. We know he's going to be in good coverage, but physicality-wise, I think Deebo could create some opportunities, especially with Jawan as well. And so I think that we're going to get some open receivers. I think when Brock Purdy catches them in zone, it's going to be a problem. I think what really helps this 49ers passing game in this matchup is once they get the run game established with Christian McCaffrey, the play action and the play action boot. I think those types of things are going to be huge for the 49ers and create some real level scheme concepts when they're throwing the football that could get some open plays for Aiyuk, for Deebo, and for George Kittle. And still, there's this one matchup that no one really ever talks about. He flies under the radar, but number 44, Kyle Juszczyk, finding opportunities in the passing game as well. So it's going to be a fun one. Their cornerbacks are going to make it tougher, but the 49ers have big-time players, and they can get some plays done too.
I want to switch to defense, but before we do, David has a question. Any word on who the kickoff returner will be? Guerrero is still hurt. What do you think? Is it going to be Ronnie Bell? Could they put Jacob Cowing back there to return kicks? I think that he probably is going to be the guy returning punts. I don't even know if Ronnie Bell is going to be active. Who do you see going back there to return kicks?
Well, according to the unofficial depth chart that came out from the media yesterday, it's going to be Jordan Mason. I don't know if that's going to be entirely accurate. I've been kind of teasing Jordan Mason as one of those guys that's going to return. I think that if Isaac Guerendo's healthy and ready to go, we'll see. I just don't know if they want Isaac Guerendo to be active. They might need other players. They're going to be elevating potentially a defensive end and Sam Okawanu for this game. Because Yetur Gross-Matos hasn't returned to practice. So it's likely Okawanu is one of those guys promoted off the practice squad, and probably Tracy Walker if Taldo Hufanga is not ready. So those two guys coming up means you might not have the ability to have Isaac Guerendo active to handle return duties. So that puts it firmly on Jordan Mason, on Deebo Samuel, who did a lot of it during training camp. Those guys would make some sense. And then you start looking at some other guys as well. Maybe Patrick Taylor, he handled it a little bit during training camp and preseason as well. So I think it's likely to be a running back that's back there or a guy like Deebo that's a wide back because of the way that they're going to run this scheme on these dynamic kickoffs, which could look a lot like an outside zone, but they got to be someone that can field the ball because we're going to start seeing line drives, knuckle balls that barely land in the zone and try to bounce through. So it's going to be interesting. I never count out anyone else. I don't count out Jacob Cowing. We know he's going to handle the punt return duties, but I would lean towards a running back type.
All right, let's turn to defense. When the 49ers are on defense, the two things that concern me are stopping the Jets' run game and Aaron Rodgers. I know he's like 80, but the last time he played, he was still really good. And so what are you most concerned about when the 49ers are on defense? Can the Jets score points on this 49ers group?
Yeah, they can. All right, they got Garrett Wilson. They've got talent when it comes to wide receiver as well. And so they have the tools necessary for Aaron Rodgers to be able to get the ball down the field and make plays. They got Mike Williams that they added from the Chargers. So talented group. It's going to be, the cornerbacks for the 49ers are going to be tested. They are good, though. But the focus has got to be on stopping Breece Hall in this running game. If you can stop the running game and make Green Bay Packers one-dimensional, then that's when you're New York Jets are so used to seeing Aaron Rodgers in Green
Right.
Bay. You can make them one-dimensional. That's when you'll start having an advantage. But you got to force these third and long situations. Those are keys. You can't let Aaron Rodgers have third and manageable and be able to get a quick completion for a first down. So I do think it's going to be about stopping Breece Hall. And the Jets did a big-time job of revamping their entire offensive line. They brought in Tyron Smith to play left tackle. They brought in Morgan Moses to play right tackle. They have done a very good job, and Elijah Vera Tucker is healthy coming into his 5th year. So they've got a good offensive line. It's way better than it was last year. But if the 49ers can stop the run, especially on early downs, I think it would take away a little bit of Nathaniel Hackett's play action. It'll take away a little bit of Aaron Rodgers' comfortability in the pocket. If you can get 3rd and long, that's when Bosa and Leonard Floyd, Malik Collins, and Javon Hargrave can kind of pin their ears back and go. And Malik Collins and Javon Hargrave are very good rushing from the inside. So I think that's what it has to be. And stopping Breece Hall is no small feat. And the offensive line definitely got better from the Jets. But 49ers have the capabilities to do it. But I think that's going to be one of their main focuses.
John asked how we stopping Breece. Is that going to be the key, or is stopping Aaron Rodgers going to be the key?
It's got to start with the running game. So one philosophy that you picked up from DeMeco Ryans, and then that's what Nick Sorensen's going to go with, is you have to stop the run and make a team one-dimensional. Once you take away the run, then what you do is you take away things that are happening over the middle, and you play an inside-out style of defense, which is tremendously different from what Steve Wilks did. Steve Wilks liked to play outside in, and that's why you started seeing plays over the middle of the field, less dynamic plays from guys like Talanoa Hufanga last year. It just was a different concept, but Charvarius Ward had his best season with some of the way that Steve Wilks did it. Well, now they're going back to the inside-out approach. So they're going to take away the run. Then they want to take away the pass over the middle and kind of let this thing filter out and make it for long throws to the sidelines. That's what the 49ers theme is going to be this year. So with Breece Hall, it's going to be all about gap integrity for the 49ers, taking on double teams with that defensive line and trying to keep their linebackers clean. One concern for me is the potential of DFF starting at Sam Backer. If the Jets see that as a mismatch for them, they could potentially run at DFF a lot. Robert Saleh knows DFF better than most coaches in this league. So he's going to know what his strengths and weaknesses are, and he's weak when it comes to stopping the run consistently. Normally, they run a lot of 11 personnel with the Jets, but I could see them running some 21 and getting 2 tight ends on the field, or 2 running backs on the field. 2 running backs, 1 tight end, and really going after this 49ers run defense, mainly running at DFF, trying to get some movement on those interior defensive linemen. I think that's the key. But I think the 49ers have the tools to be able to stop it, or at least slow down Breece Hall a little bit.
So in the past, whether it was against Aaron Rodgers or really anyone, the 49ers defense was led by that pass rush. When they were really good at stopping the run first, but they also were really good at getting after the quarterback. This was in some years where their corners, their secondary wasn't quite as strong. This year, it's possible that their secondary is better than their defensive front. When Aaron Rodgers drops back to pass, do you expect the strength of the 49ers defense to be on the back end or on that front end with the pass rush like they have in years past?
I think it's kind of paired equally, actually. I think that this defensive line is really good. We've got Leonard Floyd, who's the best option opposite of Bosa since D Ford back in 2019. I mean, this is a great pairing. And then when you look on the interior with Malik Collins and Javon Hargrave, they're 2 of the best interior pass rushers that the 49ers have had at defensive tackle. Like, this is really good. Is it Buckner? No, it's not Buckner when it comes to Malik Collins, but he's pretty good, and he's going to get after the quarterback. He's a top 10 type defensive tackle rushing the passer. I think when you look out at the secondary, we've got some things that need to be answered when it comes to Isaac Yedem. I think I really liked him a lot at training camp, a lot. We didn't get to see him in the preseason. I think he's going to be able to live up to the task, but he's going to have to prove it, right? He's going to get out there on Garrett Wilson, and he's going to have to make sure he can shut him down a little bit. And so we know what Lenore and Charvarius Ward are, but there's some question marks in the secondary when it comes to how good is Isaac Yedem actually going to be in this system, and how good is George Odom going to be filling in for Talanoa Hufanga until he comes back. And I think those questions right there make me think Aaron Rodgers has a chance to find some open receivers unless Yedem plays to the potential that we think he can, and George Odom plays as good as he did during the offseason. Then in that case, it's going to get more difficult, and all of a sudden there's going to be times that the defensive backs are going to do a great job, and that's going to give the defensive line longer to get home. And then there's going to be other times they're not doing as good, but the D-line is going to pick them up. For once, they have a complete balance of each can pick each other up. And I think the 49ers are excited about the fact this is the best secondary they've had probably in Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch's tenure.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch them for sure. Let me get to a few things here. Mr. Corey said 49ers 31, Jets 14. I'd love to see that. I don't think it's going to be quite that. I don't think the 49ers are going to score 30 points.
It's going to be tough to score 30. Now, a lot of teams scored 30 last year on the Jets. If you go back and you look, they gave up a lot of points. But remember, their offense was absolutely anemic with Zach Wilson and whoever else they were rolling out at quarterback last year. They just couldn't get any drives put together. They couldn't score points. They kicked a lot of field goals last year. So other teams had a lot of opportunities to run offensive plays. So I think it'll be a little bit different for this Jets defense with Aaron Rodgers. And that's why they're going to try to establish a run game and make things different. So I do think 30 is going to be hard to attain for the 49ers, even though they are absolutely locked and loaded. They're bringing back pretty much every single starter from last year, and all they did was replace one of their starters with a young rookie who was going to take that job in Dominic Pooney. You could say they got better, and that's crazy to say.
Jim Everett the Great said, due to distractions and Aiyuk not in game shape, Jets 34, 49ers 19. What do you think of Jim Everett the Great's prediction?
Well, I mean, since he didn't sack himself right this time in the huddle, or in the pocket by himself, I will say I don't think that distractions are going to have any sort of create any sort of dynamic for this game. I don't think distractions are something the 49ers are worried about. They know how to put those things and mitigate those and put those behind them. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. And plus, I don't think that the Jets are going to be able to score 34 points against this 49ers defense. If you told me the Jets won, I would say that they probably scored 24 points, probably somewhere in there. And you're talking like 24-20, something like that. They were able to play the 49ers really well. But I don't think that either one of these teams make it to 30. I think the defenses are too good. The offenses are good. I think the 49ers offense has a little bit more balance. But, yeah, I don't see 30 for either team, at least not from what I've seen on film and then just kind of reading into what these teams look like now.
John said 28-19 more realistic. Losing to the Jets is going to suck. So, John, are you saying that the 49ers are going to lose 28-19? Be interested to see what he's thinking there. Last question. Mr. Corey says or asked Ant, how do you feel? How did you feel about the 49ers losing Jarrett Kingston or Kingsley? No, it's Kingston.
He means Kingston. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't fun. You know, I think that they wanted to keep him, and you always want to keep all your players. And it's one of those things you run into when you're trying to build a championship team is how much is right now and how much do you have as far as roster spots for the future. And I think the 49ers looked at their roster and they said, you know what? We have guys that are better than Jarrett Kingston right now that can help us. And if we can get Jarrett Kingston to the practice squad, fantastic. We can continue the development. Maybe he'll be able to help us. But, I mean, when he first got drafted, I was looking at a guy that could help us in year 2, year 3, and the 49ers just weren't able to wait that long for a pick of his caliber to develop. So he goes to Carolina, and the 49ers think that maybe next year they can find another Jarrett Kingston that they can plug into this lineup, a late-round draft pick, and maybe he'll have more success. But if you look at the interior part of the offensive line for the 49ers, the depth is better than it's been over the last couple years, and that's saying something. You got a young player like Nick Sakel who's getting better. You got a guy like Ben Barch who's had 46 starts or 46 games played in his career. You got him. And so I think they're feeling pretty comfortable, and there just wasn't a spot for Jarrett Kingston. But I like him. I'm hoping the best for him, but he's got to get a lot better when it comes to run blocking. That's the one thing that I think held Jarrett Kingston off making this football team.
Kenny said the Jets are horrible and will remain horrible until the curse is broken in 2068. That's a long time. Actually, I think that they're going to be good this year. I think that a healthy Aaron Rodgers is going to be a big addition for them. And then John says, yes, he is saying that the 49ers are going to lose 28-19. And hey, it's possible. You never know. A lot of things can go wrong. Things can go right either way, and a game can turn quickly on a turnover, some kind of mistake, and so you never know what's going to happen. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Football is back. Ant, you have any final words before we take off here?
Yeah, I'm excited about this game coming up. 49ers versus Jets. The return of Robert Saleh, right? I mean, that's going to be a lot of fun. The respect that I have for Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich and that coaching staff. You're going to see a lot of familiar faces from that coaching staff, from that team. And it's going to be fun because you're going to see offenses that mirror each other a little bit, defenses that mirror each other a little bit. And so it's always a cool matchup Monday night under the lights. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I expect the 49ers to play really well in this game, and it'll kick off the season. I'm excited about Monday.
Mr. Corey thinks that Dominic Pooney is going to be second-team All-Pro. Wouldn't that be great? And Kenny said that Super Bowl III was rigged, and the price for that Super Bowl was a 100-year curse. So that explains what he was talking about. Yeah, who knows? I kind of doubt it was rigged, but crazy. I wasn't around back then, so I wouldn't know. But hey, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll be back next week to break down the game and to preview the following game. So it's going to be a lot of fun this weekend. So make sure that you get plenty of rest so that you're ready to go for all the football that you're going to be watching over the weekend and on Monday night. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. See ya.